A business trip to an island paradise gets a high-strung woman stranded with a mysterious and possibly dangerous man. On a plane heading to the Cook Islands, Julia remains busy working on her laptop while her husband John enjoys a drink. Upon arrival, the couple receives a warm welcome from the locals. Julia's business partner William greets them and gives them a ride to their hotel. The woman mentions hearing that the locals are concerned about their business plans in the area, but William downplays this. The group arrives at the hotel, where the receptionist, Anita, checks the couple in. In their room, John heads to the balcony and spots a wedding happening downstairs. This reminds him that this trip was supposed to be their long-overdue honeymoon, so he teases about using this time to conceive a child. However, Julia remains fixated on work, so when John invites her to swim in the ocean, she just promises to catch up later. By nightfall, William tells Julia that a boat will take her to an island early in the morning. Anita soon approaches the guests to invite John to dance. The man hesitates, but when his wife gives him an approving look, he takes the offer. One of the male performers invites Julia to dance as well, and despite her hesitation, he pulls her to the dance floor. The next day, Julia calls her father, Trevor, assuring him that she'll close their deal in the tropical islands. She mentions that she's preparing to check the island they're interested in, and Trevor chides that her husband should be helping. With this in mind, Julia asks a sleepy John if he has already signed the insurance papers, and the man nods. Convinced, Trevor ends their call. Seeing that she's ready to leave, John mourns that he'll miss her while she's gone. The woman finally shows sympathy for her husband's loneliness, so she wonders if she should skip the boat and wait for a plane to take them both to the island. However, John tells her to take the boat so she can finish her job and start enjoying their honeymoon. Julia promises to do so and kisses her husband goodbye. Julia soon arrives at the docks, where William introduces her to her boat's captain. As the captain's assistant, Sid, helps arrange her things, William assures the woman that he'll pick her up tomorrow morning when she returns. While Julia enjoys her private boat ride, Sergeants Roy and Briggs approach Anita at the hotel and show her a photo of a man they're looking for. The woman suspiciously says no too quickly, so Roy tells her to look carefully at the man. The receptionist insists that she hasn't seen him, so the sergeants just leave their numbers, instructing her to call them if she ever sees the wanted man. Meanwhile, Sid shows the captain a storm warning, but the man assures his passenger that the weather won't be a problem. Unbeknownst to Julia, her husband approaches the hotel receptionist and compliments her artwork. He then suggestively asks her to give him a tour around the island. But when Anita nervously laughs at the implication, John clarifies that he's hoping to get a surprise for his wife. John explains that they've been married for years, but his wife had been so busy that it's taken them years and a business trip to have a honeymoon. With this in mind, Anita accompanies John to the beach and the ocean, so he can find something unique to offer his wife. She also takes him to the museum and teaches him about the island's history, brazenly holding the married man's hand to guide him. During all this, Julia begins feeling seasick, so the captain urges her to rest in the cabin. Eventually, Anita takes John to a jeweler, where they look at some black pearls. That night, Julia wakes up to the boat rocking violently as the storm rages outside. With the captain missing, Sid tosses her a life jacket and hurriedly leads her out of the cabin. He then pulls her to jump into the water, and despite Julia's hesitation, he pushes her before diving in. Julia wakes up alone on an uncharted island in the morning. Panicked, she searches for anyone to help, and to her luck, Sid appears from the jungle with coconuts. She embraces the man in delight, and the man doesn't respond to her gesture. He remains silent when she pesters him with questions, making her assume that he's mute. To her surprise, Sid tells her to sit down and drink the coconut juice. Julia is apprehensive about this at first, but her thirst compels her to enjoy the drink. Afterward, Sid starts making his way back to the jungle to build a shelter, hinting that they'll be here for a long while. Elsewhere, John receives a call and acknowledges what the caller says. On the island, Sid gets annoyed by Julia's constant questions and demands. She even questions if they really need to build a shelter, confident that a search party is on their way. With this, she decides to stay on the beach in case a boat passes by, finally leaving Sid to work in peace. Hours later, Julia finally realizes that no help might come, so she approaches Sid, who's already built a shelter. However, she's unimpressed and refuses to sleep there. only for the man to reveal that he made it for himself alone. At sunset, William and Anita approach John to reveal that Julia's boat never reached the island. The next day, Anita accompanies John to the police station, where they learn that they haven't found his wife. The officer assures him that they've rescued people who were lost at sea for a week, so they might still be able to find Julia. With a heavy heart, John calls his father-in-law. On her second night on the island, Julia feels something in her bed, so she calls Sid for help. Despite her panic, the man nonchalantly goes to her and checks under her skirt, where she feels something moving. He then shows her the leech that he recovered, and Julia slaps it away in panic. On the third day of Julia's disappearance, Trevor calls his son-in-law to ask for news, but there is none. John then discourages him from traveling out, given his health. He promises that he'll handle Julia's rescue, though his father-in-law isn't confident about this. Meanwhile, Julia asks Sid what his plans are, so he shares that he wants to find out where they are. With that, he tells her to prepare to head further into the jungle. The woman refuses, as she still believes that rescuers will pass by. In contrast, Sid wants to search for higher ground, so he tells Julia to stay on the beach while he leaves. Ultimately, however, the woman gets scared of being alone, so she follows him. She struggles to keep up with him, so she tries convincing him to go back instead. She believes that her husband will be out looking for her, but Sid ignores this. Julia then complains about being hungry, so Sid strips some sugar cane and instructs her to chew on it. Desperate, the woman does as she's told. Meanwhile, Anita becomes increasingly worried about searching for the two, revealing to John that Sid is actually her brother-in-law. He's the only family she has on the island, so she's desperate to find him too. Hearing this, John holds her hand and assures her that everything will be okay. Later on, the castaways reach the foot of the mountain, but Julia insists that she can't climb it. Sid looks at her skirt, then rips it in the middle, telling her that she can now climb the mountain. Hours later, they finally reach the mountain's peak, only for Sid to declare that they're in the middle of nowhere. Julia spots a nearby island, but the man explains that the ocean is infested with sharks, so it's risky for them to swim across. Hopeless and tired, Julia lies down while her companion searches for food. He soon finds some eggs and eats them raw, much to Julia's disgust. With the sun setting, Sid decides to return to the beach, annoying the woman that they have to hike back. On their way, they discover a waterfall, so Sid instructs his companion to fill their makeshift jugs while he checks for more supplies. Instead, however, Julia removes her clothes and enjoys swimming in the fresh water. When he catches her, Sid argues that they don't have time for swimming. Julia teases that he's so serious all the time before asking him to fetch her clothes. At first, he orders her to come over and get them from him, but the woman refuses, so he tosses the clothes back. Meanwhile, William and John lead a town hall meeting to convince the locals that their business developments will improve their tourism and economy. Locals, however, are concerned about their natural environment, so William promises that they will preserve it. He does admit that their plans might affect the bird ecology on a small scale, but he adds that this comes with more income for the locals. One man, however, has gathered evidence that their development will impact their environment beyond the areas they're planning to build on. John steps in to contradict the man's claims before promising the people that their developments will benefit them and their future generations. Back on the island, Julia slips and dislocates her ankle. Sid calmly puts it back in place, and the pain causes the woman to instinctively slap him. The man doesn't react to this and just heads out to search for medicinal plants. He manages to gather and prepare some, which he uses to wrap around Julia's ankle. The accident takes time though, and the sun starts to set, so they decide to stay there for one night, much to Julia's dismay. Sid finds a nearby clearing and sets his companion down. However, she starts shivering, so he wraps himself around her to provide her warmth. This helps the woman fall asleep. The following day, the sergeants approach some locals to ask about the man they're searching for. Turns out, the wanted man is Sid, who finally reaches the beach with Julia. That evening, Julia struggles to sleep, so she approaches her sleeping companion and positions herself next to him, hoping for some warmth. The man, however, has a nightmare and wakes up in shock. In the morning, Anita excitedly tells John that they found the captain alive while Julia makes an SOS sign using coconuts and rocks, which Sid thinks is a waste of time. News soon report about the captain's rescue and testimony, wherein he claimed that he was thrown off his boat amidst the storm. However, when John questions the man, he insists that since Julia and Sid were below deck during the storm, it's likely that they got trapped and drowned. By the afternoon, Julia's SOS sign gets washed off by the tide, angering her. This becomes the last straw as she rambles about how she's useless and likely won't get rescued. Sid calms her down before giving her another medicinal concoction to soothe her pain. The gesture makes Julia reflect on how kind Sid is, commenting that his wife is a lucky woman. Sid responds that he was lucky to have met his wife, who had already passed away. Moving past the thought, he shares his plans to build a raft so they can cross the sea. This gives Julia some hope. That night, John comforts Anita as she mourns for her brother-in-law. This leads to them kissing. The following morning, Trevor arrives in the Cook Islands, fuming at how his son-in-law isn't doing enough to rescue his daughter. His attitude frustrates John. Meanwhile, the castaways build their raft, with Sid teaching the woman how to tie a proper knot. He also teaches her how to fish, and as they do, Sid discovers a black pearl from a clam. He considers giving it to his companion, but decides to pocket it for now. Soon, Julia's hook catches something, only for it to be trash. Sid points out that this is what big companies do to nature, making the woman reflect on her involvement in such pollution. During dinner, Julia finally admires the nature around her, noting how she's always too busy to enjoy life. With this, Sid gives her the black pearl, which she admires. With the castaways in a good mood, they sing and dance around the campfire, forming a bond that ultimately leads to a kiss. The two immediately regret the action and pull away from each other. The next day, Anita finds John and the captain making a transaction, raising her suspicion. Once the captain leaves, John explains to her that he gave the man some money to get a new boat, so he can search for Julia and Sid. Elsewhere, Julia notices the pattern in the waves, so she estimates when they should leave the island. The duo soon row their raft into the ocean, only for them to spot a shark. They hurry in paddling away from the beast, but Sid realizes that they can't outrun it. With this, he jumps into the water to distract the shark while Julia paddles back to the island. The woman reaches land eventually, and to her horror, she finds Sid has been injured. She helps him stitch his wound that night, though the man becomes cold towards his companion. 1 week into being stranded, the two discover a suitcase in the water. They retrieve it and are delighted to find a flare gun and a satellite phone. However, it only has enough battery for one call, so Julia dials her husband's phone, not noticing how her companion is disheartened. Unbeknownst to her, John is enjoying a bubble bath with his new lover and ignoring his ringing phone. Instead, she leaves a voicemail, but the battery dies before she can finish her message. The man notices the voicemail later that day, surprised to hear his wife's voice. Soon, Julia spots a boat on the horizon, so she instructs Sid to fetch the flare gun. The man hesitates at first, but still decides to save Julia, so he fires the gun, catching the captain's attention from the boat. The man soon arrives on the beach using a spare kayak, but when the two approach him, he holds them at gunpoint. He warns Julia that Sid is wanted for murder. This stuns the woman while the captain orders Sid to throw away his knife. The man does as he's told while Julia remains conflicted on who to trust. Ultimately, she sides with the man who saved her, making the captain realize that the two have become romantically involved. Not interested in wasting time, the captain declares that Julia is supposed to be dead anyway, so he aims his gun at her, only for Sid to tackle him before he can shoot. The two get into a brawl, and when the captain gains the upper hand, Julia grabs a coconut and hits him over the head, knocking him out. Julia then assists Sid towards the captain's kayak and uses it to reach the boat. Not trusting the captain's assistant, Sid threatens him to lead them back to the mainland. He then uses the boat's radio to contact the Coast Guard just in time for the sergeants to arrive at the station and overhear him. Knowing where the man will be, the sergeants head to the docks. The media is alerted to the two's situation and soon heads to the docks to welcome them back. One reporter notes that Julia is with Sid, a doctor who's wanted for his wife's murder. Anita is the first to welcome Sid back once he arrives, but the sergeants intervene to arrest him. Julia is shocked by this, asserting that the captain should be the one arrested since he attacked them. However, the sergeants insist on Sid's crimes, breaking Julia's trust in him. She then rushes to her father's arms as Trevor and John reunite with her. Anita watches all these play out, conflicted about her feelings with Sid being arrested and John reuniting with his wife. As if to let his other woman know his decision, John kisses Julia in front of Anita. Finally back in her hotel that night, Julia is plagued with memories of Sid. John distracts her by giving her the black pearl necklace he bought, though it just reminds her of the one Sid gave her. Ridden with guilt, Julia confesses that she developed feelings for Sid while on the island. She apologizes to her husband, and after a while of thinking, he embraces her. The next day, Julia asks her father to post bail for Sid, asserting that the man saved her life. To her surprise, Trevor has already provided his daughter's savior with a legal team. Just then, a local approaches them to protest about their business. Having had a change of heart, Julia asks her father to hear him out, so the local enumerates all the damage their plan will do to the environment, urging them not to proceed. Meanwhile, Anita spots John stealing a liquor bottle from the bar. She follows him, and the man leads her to a room for some privacy. John explains that he has to remain with his wife now that she's back. Unsure what to say, Anita points out the bottle he stole, and this earns her a slap from the man. While she's knocked out, he injects something into the liquor bottle, intending it for his wife. He then ties up Anita and hides her in a closet. At the restaurant, the locals' words get to Julia, so she refuses to sign their business contract. She declares that they can't ruin this beautiful place, urging her father to invest in the island's future and preservation instead. Trevor is confused at first, but seeing the passion in her eyes, he agrees. Elsewhere, Sid, who's out on bail, is also plagued with memories of Julia. Meanwhile, Anita escapes from captivity and runs to her brother-in-law, begging him for help. She tells him that John planned for his wife to die at sea and will attempt to kill her again tonight. Anita claims they can't trust the police, so they have to save Julia. Sid worries that the woman won't trust him, but Anita insists that they have to save the people they love. With this, he joins her back to the resort. At dinner, John serves his wife some wine, and Trevor uses this time to hold a toast to his daughter. Delighted, Julia moves to sip from her wine, but Sid storms in, warning her that her husband is trying to kill her. Julia distrusts him while John orders the guards to send Sid away. However, Anita takes this chance to reveal that she was the one who killed her sister out of mercy, since she was suffering from a sickness. Sid was only covering up for her. Anita then accuses John of trying to poison his wife, which Julia still isn't convinced of. However, her father decides that to prove his innocence, John should drink his wife's wine. John is unable to do it, proving that he had poisoned the wine. With him defeated, Anita punches the man as revenge while a heartbroken Julia walks away. The next day, Sid reminisces about his time with Julia, and to his surprise, the woman approaches him, finally accepting that he's the one for her.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.